so amazing how innovative it is, how intelligent people are that work in this industry, and how much money can be made so quickly and lost even faster. If you do this the right way, man, you can still make gobs and gobs of money. But if you do it the wrong way, man, you're just pissing in the wind.
As you grow, you don't realize how you expose yourself. And I was doing things that I thought were fine, but I guess they weren't fine. And I had a couple issues I ran into, and they cost me a lot of money.
Saving money is what it's all about, but it's also about protecting your brand and ultimately protecting yourself. And unfortunately, under TCPA, it's not just your business that gets sued. You can get sued personally. You can get sued personally.
I knew a guy. He was owed like $75,000 by the advertiser. And he's like, I don't understand. All I did was send them a call. It was a paper call thing. That's what happens. If your client is burned, you're going to get burned.
Oh, right? Absolutely. From one hand, it is kind of a dumb tax, but from the other hand, this is an incredibly aggressively litigated statute with very good lawyers. These are the best, brightest, most intelligent, and highly paid, sophisticated attorneys in the world are bringing TCPA class actions because there's so much money there. TCPA class actions are up 40% this year, and they were already up 30% the year before. And I am telling you, man, the TCPA plaintiff sharks, they are licking their chops. They are looking forward to January. They've got these conferences they attend. This is all they're talking about. So all they want is for the calendar page to turn so they can catch these companies unaware and just crush them. It is going to be a bloodbath in 2025.
Get ready to level your shit up with the LFG show. We travel the globe to bring you heavy hitters from all walks of life. We've been talking some serious business, from the best digital marketers, government contracting experts, to top athletic and celebrity doctors. We've got it all covered. We're talking to guys with cash in for billions with a B. And the best thing is, we're just getting started. So hold on tight. We're about to crank it up a notch. Get ready for next level networking and masterminds within the LFG community. Scared money don't make no money or honey. Hit the subscribe button, drop a like, leave a comment, and let's fucking go.
Guys, I know we've been talking our show. We've done 30-something podcasts. We're always talking about how we can optimize campaigns, how we can make more money. But this is probably the most important show we've shot, because it's not about the money you make, it's the money you keep. And when you're not running in a compliant fashion, you're not doing the right thing by your clients, guess what? You're going to lose all your money. You're going to be out of business. And that's why it's an honor to have Eric Troutman with Troutman Amin Law Firm. These guys are doing amazing things. Man, they've helped me out back in the day when I first started with some sticky situations that I was unaware. And like a lot of you are probably unaware, you're exposing yourselves to. So great to have you on the show.
Man, absolutely, David. What you're doing, by the way, let me just say, before we dive in, man, you are a voice for this industry that this industry needs, right? Because people tune into me, they hear from me, I'm doing my thing, I'm doing the law, the compliance. But when it comes to getting the nitty gritty, like how to win, and I'm not talking about in the courtroom, I'm not talking about from a legal perspective, I mean, win in the marketplace, you're the only one delivering the goods, man. I love it. I love what you're doing. I really do. It's a real honor, honestly. It's an honor to be here.
It means a lot. We've been trying to do this for a while. We've talked, I mean, probably like 3, 4, 5 months trying to get this done. We just kept missing each other. You know how it is at the shows. Man, one thing happens and then an hour goes by, 2 hours go by, and the day goes by. Like, oh my God, we didn't get it done. But we're at the Solar Summit right now in Anaheim, and I saw you walk, and I'm like, we're going to do this today. Let's bang it out, man. So
get it done.
First of all, congratulations. I mean, I met you at 2019 at it was in Florida, TCPA.
TCPA Summit in Florida. Yeah. That's the contact center compliance thing that they throw every year, the summit. It's a great show. One of my favorites. They do it every year. But yeah, I remember meeting you there.
We met there, and man, that was a time where my company started to grow tremendously. But as you grow, you don't realize how you expose yourself. And I was doing things that I thought were fine, but I guess they weren't fine. And I had a couple issues I ran into, and they cost me a lot of money. And in business, they call it the dumb tax. You're by being naive, by being dumb, and I had to pay the dumb tax. So when I came to that show, I was like, we got to button up. We need to sign up for active prospect. We got to do this. We got to do that. And I thank you for that, because you know what? You probably saved me a lot of money. It was being preventative and being defensive at a time we had to be.
Well, I mean, look, saving money is what it's all about, but it's also about protecting your brand and ultimately protecting yourself, right? Because a TCPA, which is the number one cash cow in America, right? Those of you that are in the outreach game, right? You're out here making phone calls to consumers, texting consumers, reaching out to consumers. The number one statute, the law that governs what you do is the TCPA. Bad news for you is that the TCPA just happens to be the number one cash cow, the most exploited, abused statute in America that the plaintiff's lawyers get rich off of. These guys are all millionaires. So they're hungry and they're out there hunting for you. And unfortunately, under TCPA, it's not just your business that can get sued. You can get sued personally. You can get sued personally. Your personal fortune, your personal bank accounts can be taken by these sharks, these litigators, these scumbags. So you've got to just be so cautious. I mean, you can call it a dumb tax, and from some perspective it is, but really it's a massive risk.
Yeah, it's huge. And you're talking about, let's talk some numbers. I mean, I've spoken at a lot of shows. I've spoken at Affiliate World several times, and you find a lot of good media buyers internationally, but they're unaware of these laws. So I always, a lot of what I do is a lot of rah, yeah, let's make money, but I always put somewhere in towards the end, I talk about TCPA. I talk about protecting yourself. I was a victim. I spent a lot of dumb money like out the window, which at the time was terrible, right? And then there's never a good time for that. But I would show examples. I mean, I think it was like Greyhound, 30 million. There's so many. You're talking about 8-9 figure, settlements. So let's talk about that so people understand the magnitude of this.
Oh yeah. So I mean, we can pick on Quote Wizard real quick, right? Great Quote brand. People like Quote Wizard. Yeah. They've been certified in TCPA class action certification. That means right now they're going to trial. And they're facing minimum $150 million in exposure. $150 million, right? And that's Quote Wizard. That's a good brand. That's a sophisticated company that actually has lawyers that knows what they're doing, and yet they're still in this situation. So, I mean, and obviously that's at the high level. Small companies get hit for this stuff all the time, right? You've got companies that have to go bankrupt. You've got companies that, I mean, everyone knows about assurance. Those guys were in a heap, right, of TCPA trouble. That's public record. Now, I'm not saying that, they got shuttered because of that, but I don't know. Maybe, right?
It definitely affected it. There's one thing and a bunch of other months.
Yeah, there's just so much risk out there. And then you talk about settlements. I mean, you can't name a major bank, right, that hasn't had a 8-figure settlement under the TCPA. $75 million settlement is Capital One. But even like last year, Keller Williams had a $45 million settlement. Man. All states had a ton of settlements, one of them over $40 million. So it doesn't matter what vertical you're in, that the big brands in every one of these verticals is getting hit. And so, that's what I'm saying. Like from one hand, it is kind of a dumb tax, but from the other hand, this is an incredibly aggressively litigated statute with very, very good lawyers that are on the plaintiff side. I mean, I can't emphasize this enough. These are like super sharks. These are the best, brightest, most intelligent, and highly paid, sophisticated attorneys in the world are bringing TCPA class actions because there's so much money there. And that's literally why I exist, right? I mean, you've got supervillains out there, so you need, I don't know if I'm Batman or whatever, but you need a better class of lawyer on your side because people are just getting destroyed out there.
Yeah, and I think the good thing is that you come to all the shows. Yeah, you talk to groups like me. You talk to the media buyers. You talk to the brokers. You talk to the end installers. So you see the pain from all different angles. And by being in the trenches, I know there's other groups. They got big names, but they don't go. You put in the work. You travel. You hustle. You got your team, and we'll talk later on how you manage all this stuff. I think you have a good system behind it. But by you understanding our pain, by listening, I think it helps you really. It helps you with the clients at the end of the day, and it helps you make sure that they protect themselves, and you educate as well.
I mean, look, there's a lot of pieces to it. I start off on the road shows because I really sincerely care about the small businesses and the large businesses in this community. I want to keep them safe, right? And you guys know, I go out there, I hand out just dozens of hours, hundreds of hours of my personal work that I do free and just hand out to everybody every day, every
That's true.
I don't care, right? Like, you go to my website, you go to tcpaworld.com, you don't have to sign up. You don't have to enter your
great website, right? tcpaworld.com. A lot of good information. You constantly update it too, which is awesome, for free.
And that's what I'm saying. You don't have to even give me your information. I don't do anything with your information. I don't mine it. It's ironic. I talk to lead generators. I don't do anything with your data. And when I go out and I talk on stages across the country.
You might get a TCPA violation, man. That's why.
Well, I mean, look, I love just talking to people though and trying to educate them, and mostly just trying to give access to legal information, make it as easy for people to understand as I can so that they don't get sued. Like, not everyone's going to be able to retain me, right? And I can't give legal advice from the stage, but I can help people to understand at the highest level, like, this is the law. Be aware of it. It's out there. Please, like, protect yourself, because I'm so tired of seeing good people just get destroyed by this horrible statute and the way it's abused so badly. But that's just one piece of it. And the second piece is, as you get out there, obviously, it's good for me from a lead gen perspective. I get clients out of it. Sure, I do. But what it really also gives me is this really good visibility in terms of what everybody's actually doing, so that I, as an attorney, really, really understand people's businesses. And I can help them. And a lot of what I do kind of transcends just legal advice. I can give you strategic business guidance so that if you got to comply with the 1-to-1 rule, you want to go through one channel, you want to go through one kind of funnel, but it's not going to work, right? And you don't know why, because you're not a lawyer and you're not supposed to know why. But I know why. But here's the thing: unlike most lawyers, they can say, "Oh, you can't do that." I'm able to say, "You can't do that, but
you can do this.
Here's what you can do," right? And that, I think, really sets us apart as a law firm and really helps us to empower and really partner with folks that retain us to make them just supercharge their businesses. Then, of course, our ecosystem, right? We have hundreds of clients, hundreds of companies that are both buyers and sellers that want to work together, love connecting people. It's like probably one of my highest and best uses in the industry is just connecting people, which is really fun. I really enjoy that.
And you guys are connecting me to people, and home improvement, like it's a great thing.
Always, man.
And you're going to do it because it's like, my history, their history. It's like, you're not going to just quit. It's like what we're doing here with Ruben. Yep. He's getting good people. It's invite only. It's like it's a select network is what it is. Yeah. So that's awesome. So I love that. And then I was going to say, everyone's got to be aware of this stuff, because I think we just did a mastermind, right? And I don't think people are aware of what's coming down the pike. They hear about this 1-to-1, they hear about TCPA, and they think they're not going to get affected. And one thing I want to share a story is I get hit up. People look to me like it's, some genius, but like there's certain things I know, certain things I don't know. A lot of things is experience, making mistakes. But I knew a guy, he was owed like $75,000 by the company, the advertiser. And he's like, I don't understand. All I did was send them a call. It was a paper call thing, da. That's what happens. If your client is burned, you're going to get burned.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
And this was a guy who just started. He started to make some money, and boom, that's $75,000. He's never going to see. And I think people don't talk about that enough, man. You think you can run whatever ad, and I don't know if the ad was legal compliant or not. It sounds like there was something wrong with it. He probably did without knowing. But you have to know this stuff. You can't skimp on this stuff.
No, it's amazing. This industry is so amazing, kind of like backing up how innovative it is, how intelligent people are that work in this industry, how much money can be made
fast,
so quickly and lost even faster, right? And that's what you said at the beginning of this thing is, hey, look, it's not about what you make, it's about what you keep, right? So you do this the right way, man, you can still make gobs and gobs of money, but you got to do it the right way. Yeah. If you do it the wrong way, man, you're just pissing in the wind. People are going to take that from you so fast it'll make your head spin. And even worse, you're going to be, in your own mind, you're spending it, and now you've lost it. Now you're even worse situation if you hadn't even worked. Man, it's terrible. It's not a good situation. But yeah, so 1-to-1 is coming out, and there's no running from this. There's no escaping this.
That's 1-to-1 consent, guys. If you know about, is that January 27th, 2005?
So you got it. You nailed it.
Yeah, okay.
You got it. Yeah. So I mean, hopefully you all know about this already, but you can no longer have 5,000 names on a marketing partner list, right? You cannot get bulk aggregated consents any longer. Each and every seller, that is not the lead seller, by the way, that's the good and service provider. In our vernacular, the buyer, the lead buyer. Yeah. Every company, every brand that the consumer is going to hear from has to be individually selected on that form. And it's as simple as that, right? That either it's a single form, brand form, and then one brand and they accept, or you can have multiple brands, but they have to be little check boxes, right? And the consumer has to decide who they want to hear from. There's a bunch of nuance to this. Obviously, I'm not going to break this whole thing down right now on this podcast, but it's a huge deal. And if you're not compliant with that, every phone call you make after January 27, 2025 is illegal.
And what are the fines for this? If you
$500 per call, $500. So you think about the scale at which people make these outbound calls, and you can aggregate it. It's not just one person. Understand, please understand. It's not just one guy sues you for $500, right? Who cares? We're talking about class actions where every single call you make gets combined into one case. And so you're looking at 500 million, a billion, 5 billion, because there's 4 years statutory look back, 4 years your conduct is at issue. Yeah. I mean, it can cost major brands, right, their entire bankroll. And if you're a small company, obviously you can get swept up in that. There's personal liability, right? They don't have to pierce the corporate veil like in most places. You can be sued individually. It's terrible, guys. It's just a terrible statute. Like, you've really got to comply. And that's the amazing thing about this industry, right? So much opportunity, and yet so much risk.
Yeah. And I think too, media buyers, a lot of our audience are media buyers. There's people operate in the gray to get cheaper clicks, right? And then by doing that, they expose themselves, they expose their clients. I mean, this is a time, your partner, Pooja, was just on stage, did a great speech, but she said, in a way, there's like a cleansing. Yeah, it'll be more expensive generally, but the quality will be better. And at the end of the day, that's what the end company buyer wants. They want better quality data. So I think it's going to force media buyers to clean up their acts if they haven't done so already, and just operate in the right way, or else they're going to get destroyed. They're going to get kicked out the business. I mean, they're not going to be able to withstand these fines.
No, and look, I think this could end up being a beautiful thing over time. Look, we're going to have some fits and starts. It's going to be painful at first,
of course.
but I mean, what should happen is the CPA should stay the same, right?
Yeah.
The cost,
or get better, maybe get better.
Of the lead is going to go up, or maybe even get better, right? Cost of the lead is going to go up. There's going to be less leads, right? So those of you out there selling, just wrap your head around the fact that you're not going to be able to sell the same volume. It's just not possible, right? Yeah. So you're going to have to make that revenue with higher prices. And so you just got to start thinking, this is guerrilla math, right? I'm going to sell half as many leads, so I have to charge twice as much, right? Exactly. I mean, it's not that complicated. It's arithmetic. And the lead buyers have to understand that too, right? You're getting a superior product, meaning this consumer is very high intent. They just selected your name. For God's sake, they want to hear from you and maybe just you. Obviously, now if it gets in your hands, the hands of your inside sales guys, they can't close the deal. You got no one to blame but yourself, right? Exactly. And so you've got to be able to pay for that lead and expect to pay for that lead. But at the end of the day, it really should all work out. There should be less unwanted calls, which is what the commission wants, the FCC wanted. But the small and mid-sized businesses that rely on leads, I'm hopeful, knocking on wood, that there's still going to be opportunity. There's still going to be breathing space for them to have their names still appearing on these forms. But it's going to be interesting because obviously the big boys are going to do fine, right? If you're Progressive, you're Geico, sure, your name's going to be on plenty of insurance forms, right? Yeah. But if you're a small insurer, your Cincinnati insurer, are you going to get your name on those forms? I don't know. Yeah. That's the challenge. To me, that's the challenge. I don't know the answer to that question.
Yeah. And I think a lot of those smaller groups, and this affects me. I've talked about it a lot. We have a company that does age data, and we've never had issues. My partner is on the board of Reach, right? Ed?
Yeah.
And the thing is that this affects us. There's no more, it kills that. So I think smaller guys would rely on, that was how they will compete. So now they got to build their own media buying teams. They're going to have the landing pages one-to-one. They're going to have to adapt. And I think a lot of them they're not even aware of this is the issue.
It's going to be tough, especially folks in the franchise model or independents, in the insurance vertical or in real estate. There's a lot of verticals where, really these are separate LLCs, separate entities that are providing the good or service to the customer. They might be a single person LLC. They might have 4 or 5 employees as a team, let's say in a franchise real estate environment. And these guys, their names have to be on the form, right? It can't be X global brand that everybody knows. It has to be X global brand of Delaware 213 LLC. That's the one that's actually providing that good or service to the customer. What are the odds of these guys getting their names, right? So these leads for many of these independents are going to just start drying up. It's going to become a very underserviced environment. And if somebody can kind of crack that, right? How do we get the names of small business buyers onto these forms? Yeah. I mean, someone's going to clean up when they can do it at scale, but it's going to be a real challenge. That's going to be real tough for people.
It is going to be. And I want to talk about how did this all start? And I just assume because there was just a barrage of BS calls, robocalls, right? The Washington, D.C. got a lot of complaints. Is that how this all started?
Yeah, man. I mean, look, this is the only industry in America where you can sell something infinitely almost, right? And just keep monetizing it as if there's value to it. If somebody fills out a form 5 years ago, technically that might still be a valid lead, right? And if you've got 5,000 names on a website, and you know how this works. When something gets sold, doesn't just get sold to, the ultimate buyer. There could be 3 aggregators, 3 people in between that are taking these leads, and maybe even they're reselling it, and nobody's even keeping track of what's happening to this inventory. Yeah. And so the original publisher might sell it 5 times, an aggregator might sell it 5 times, another aggregator might sell it 5 times. The brand might get it, not be able to convert. They remonetize and sell it 5 times, right? And you're in a situation where you fill out one form one time and you might receive 1,000 phone calls from 20 or 30 different companies. No, guys, that was unsustainable. It was always unsustainable. And it was no surprise to me at all that the FCC has come down. And I'll tell you, I mean, people don't know this. We don't talk about it enough. The FCC's original plan was to shut down lead generation. I was going to ask you about that.
They're going to shut down Legion. That was scary.
Totally not. Yeah, the original position.
Round of applause for that. Look at that. That was a bad time.
That's fantastic. The original plan for the FCC for lead gen was to say you cannot transfer a lead at all. Now, Reach, Responsible Enterprises Against Consumer Harassment, lobbied hard because I believe in the lead gen industry. I believe in small businesses. I believe that these are the superpower, the hidden superpower of the American economy, connecting consumers with small companies that can provide goods and services. I love the story of lead gen, and I wanted to keep it alive. And so Reach advocated hard to the commission, said, guys, you cannot wipe out this industry. And the commission listened, and they did find that there is benefit to comparison shopping. There's benefit to lead generation. They saw the benefit to small business, and they wanted to give an avenue, a little bit of breathing space. So they landed on one-to-one as opposed to wiping out the industry altogether. But you have to understand, like those who are concerned about the change, the industry brought it upon themselves. And I say this with love. I love you guys. But it was sloppy. It was abusive. And it was dirty, rotten tricks, right? Yeah. And now we're past that. We're in a new generation. It's going to be holistic. It's going to be clean. And the future is Reach and the members of Reach who have pledged to do things the right way and follow tight standards. We're going to be ahead of the regulators. We're going to ensure that this industry is going to last a long time. And there's lots of money to be made, but in a way that does not harass consumers. And that's what we got to get to. Yeah.
And I love the mission and that it cleans up. It's an ecosystem you have as well. And if you're a part of the ecosystem, you know that person's doing the right thing.
That's right.
Is what it comes down to. And I think it's like self-policing. And that's what any good industry eventually becomes, right? And I think it's a maturation, there's a consolidation going on right now. Yeah. The ones that are doing it right, they're going to survive, they're going to thrive. The one that's come up with solutions. And it really comes down to everyone getting better at what they do. I had to do it. I started my company in 2016. I guess I was running rogue. I didn't realize I was. I'm trying to make money. I'm seeing the numbers go up. Then all of a sudden I get a complaint from my client. I'm like, what the heck is this? I'm like, I need an attorney. Like, what's TCPA? I had no idea about this stuff, you know? Yeah. And you don't think it's gonna hurt you. Like, oh, that's I'm under the radar. No one's gonna find out. You do the wrong thing long enough. It's like habits. It's gonna come out, man. The truth's gonna come out. So I had to pay the price. You know, I pissed away a lot of money, but that's what happened. So I say, take the lesson from me, from other people, and people think. I mean, you have a retainer, right? It costs money for this shit.
It does.
Nothing's cheap. But if you want to protect yourself, I mean, whatever it is for the retainer, whatever it is for your advice, that's going to keep you in business at the end of the day. And then when you have that ecosystem with Reach, I mean, that could turn into profitability for you by making the right connection. So I think we gotta, as an industry, look at these as necessary investments to keep ourselves going.
I mean, we really try very hard to not be a cost center. I mean, I'd like to think that Troutman Amin is an investment in really driving and scaling profit for an enterprise in a lawful way. And that's done both, of course, by us helping to guide you to understand, not just tell you what you can't do. That's not valuable.
Yeah.
Sure. Tell you, no, you can't do that, you knucklehead, but tell you what you can do, right? Give you that alternate avenue, get you from a revenue and an outreach standpoint where you want to get, plus supercharge that with relationships and partnerships and an ecosystem where you can really, really thrive with partners that you can trust, right? So like we try to provide all of that to people, but at the end of the day, I mean, you don't have to come to me for help, right? And again, I give so much free resources out there. You can just Google tcpaworld.com. It'll learn so much. But if you don't get help from me, right, get yourself an attorney. I don't care who it is. Get yourself a lawyer that knows this area of law, that is specialized and really focused on it, and protect yourself. You just have to protect yourself. You have to.
Yeah. Any real company that's grown they got a good CFO, they got the bookkeeper, they have the good legal counsel, and it's just one of those elements. So if you're somebody, maybe you're a one-person group or whatever, one-man shop, solopreneur, you still need good representation. I can't emphasize that enough. And I can't emphasize enough. I think during that one situation 6-7 years ago, I reached out to you from the show in Tampa and you gave me some advice and it was good advice. And then I used that with my client and I'm still doing business with them to this day. We got through that situation. I bit the bullet. I was at fault. I lost a lot of money on that deal, but I learned my lesson and got my stuff together. So that's what needs to happen.
But what you did just said right there is really important too, right? Because especially in the new ecosystem and integrity in this
reputation
industry, it matters, man. It matters. And you might take a bullet one day and you might lose a good amount of money, right? Early on. But if people start taking notice of that, and they're going to, and I'll tell you what, they'll notice you do the right thing, but they'll really notice you do the wrong thing.
Exactly.
And you ain't going to last
spread
long.
super fast.
You're not going to last long doing the wrong thing in this industry, especially now. Maybe, 5-6 years ago, it was kind of a different world. But these days, the spotlight is on, guys.
Absolutely.
Reach is out there. The regulators are out there. Everyone is paying super attention to this. You're not going to get away with it the way maybe you used to think you could get away with it. It's a different world.
I know a lot of you guys are doing pay per call. A lot of you guys have call centers. We got AI in the house. We got Neil Billick. He's the founder and the CEO of All Rise AI. They're doing big things. I'm a user of his service.
We are coming in immediately 4Xing contact rates for clients. What we found in my BPO when I ran it and deployed the AI was we had 30-second wait times before the deployment between connections. And my guys were making about 500 connections a day. Times 30 seconds, we were wasting 250 minutes a day per head in a call center.
That's 4 hours. That's half
4 hours,
day. Yeah.
half their day, or half their wages being spent on them waiting for a call.
Yeah.
The reason your wait time's high is when you're calling out, you have an abandon rate you have to stay under of 3%. That's programmed in your dialer.
If the AI is weeding that out, and I think that's the benefit, it's collapsing time frames, it's helping your top producers produce, which is what you want them to do.
People are afraid AI is going to replace call center agents, and it may, but right now, use it to maximize your human resource. So leveraging it for the tools it can be to do exactly what you're saying. Let the humans do what they can do best. Let the AI get cursed out.
Yeah. You just made me think of something back in 2019, and this is what really made me realize you were the real deal. You probably forgot about this, but it was there was a lady. You told the story. It was like, was it Wells Fargo?
Yeah, it was Wells
She
Fargo.
had all these burner phones. Like her job, her real way she made money. She had like 30 Magic Jack phones in different shoe boxes, and she would bait the people to call her. Right? Then you talk about this, and you won that case, right?
Yes,
I was
I
like,
did.
this guy's the real deal.
Yeah. So I was Wells Fargo's national counsel back in 2015. And there was a lady, and she had 85 cell phones. Her name was Melody Stoops.
85 cell phones.
She was a former felon. She had 85 cell phones, and her business, and she testified under oath in a deposition that her business was to get cell phone numbers from Florida, where there was, at the time, it was a tough economic time. And she knew that debt collectors would be calling those phone numbers, looking for the previous users of those phone numbers. And she would collect those calls, make notes of who's calling, right? Answer the phone, who's calling? Okay, thank you. Make a note, count how many times that number called. Once in a while, chime in and say, okay, stop calling, just to see if they would stop or keep calling. And if they kept calling, then there would be an additional enhancement that she would seek. And then she would call and send a letter to the caller and say, okay, now you owe me $5,000. And the thing is, there was like 150 calls that she would get, right? And so really, she could seek $50,000, she could seek $100,000,
Jeez.
but she was only asking for $5,000. And so most companies were just turning around and writing her a check.
Yeah.
And so she collected 60, 70, 80, of these $5,000 checks. She was living like a queen, right? They try it with Wells Fargo. And Wells Fargo's like, no, we're
They
not.
want to set a precedent.
We're not going to do
good
it.
precedent.
So they could have paid $5,000 to the lady to settle the case. They paid me $50,000 to go down and bring what's called a summary judgment motion and go down and talk to the federal judge about this and put this whole thing on display. And that was the first time ever leveraging a Supreme Court case called Spokio that a court threw out a TCPA case finding that a manufactured lawsuit, there's no standing. You cannot bring that suit. So I thought I had cleaned up the industry, right? Because that was the first case on it. It was precedent. It was powerful. It was for Wells Fargo. Everyone knew about it. It was in Forbes. I was like, great, pat myself on the back. I just saved an entire industry. But other lawyers, man, they just couldn't get it done. Yeah. And so that case just keeps getting eroded and eroded and eroded as other lawyers kind of bring these arguments and they don't do it right. And so now, unfortunately, you still see repeat litigators, people making up phones, people like that have 16, 17, 18 phones, filling out forms, still bringing lawsuits. And these cases now are able to go forward, which is really depressing because that Stoops victory was a huge victory. Yeah. I really thought we changed the course of history. But unfortunately, other lawyers they just couldn't hold it up,
Yeah. Well, I think that's amazing, man. It's amazing that you did that. And I'm like, wow, that's why Wells Fargo is as big as they are. They'll spend the money, they're protecting themselves, and you got to protect yourself at the end of the day.
Well, look, Wells Fargo was a smart company. They are smart, right? They hired me to clean up their entire enterprise. They hired me to defend them all their litigation. Yeah. These guys never get sued anymore. They never get sued. Yeah. They were very smart. And now, look, they spent a lot of money up front, but now, I mean, you can't find a TCPA class action against Wells Fargo. Good for them. I mean, that's great, right? That's what they invested in. Now, not everyone has the resources of Wells Fargo, right? But you do have to think like a brand that's got the resources to try to fight the right fights and do the right thing. I mean, that's good for everybody.
Yeah. Let me ask you, there's some people, some companies, and I won't name names, but they won't have any TCPA lawyers or anything. They're like, listen, it's just a cost of doing business. And I guess they fight it themselves. I mean, I guess there's pros and cons to it, but to me, I mean, long term, that's short term, that could work, but long term, what's your thoughts on that, or what's your feedback on that?
I think it's great until it's absolutely horrible, right? Yeah. I mean, look, I'm not gonna lie to you. If you can get it done, some troll comes to your door, and you get the case settled, and you don't have to retain a lawyer, and he doesn't retain a lawyer, and you move on. There's wisdom to that. I'm not gonna tell you there's not wisdom to that. There's wisdom to that. but you can't count that that's going to happen every time, right? It might happen once, might happen twice. Hell, it might happen 10 times. But then that 11th time, when that guy goes and hires a boss Kazarunian or the wolf Peronic, who goes off and just cracks companies like crazy, you've got to protect yourself. You've got to be smart. Now, I will say, just because you're doing everything the right way doesn't mean you're not going to get a knock on the door from a troll, right? These guys still try to troll. But if you're not doing things the right way, you are going to be low-hanging fruit, and your odds of getting popped, they're extreme. Right now, they're already high. You heard Pooja. TCPA class actions are up 40% this year.
Unbelievable.
40%. And they were already up 30%
they go up
the year before.
Every year.
Every year they're going up. And this is before 1-to-1. And I am telling you, man, the TCPA plaintiff sharks, they are licking their chops. They are looking forward to January. They've got these conferences they attend. This is all they're talking about. This is all they want is for the calendar page to turn so they can catch these companies unaware and just crush them. So it is going to be a bloodbath in 2025. So just be smart now, get your ducks in a row, and don't think you're going to get away with just settling individually with people for the rest of your life. It's just not going to work that way, most likely.
Yeah. So what's your advice to someone that's behind the trend, or maybe someone that just started? They're a smaller group, right? And where do you advise they start to start learning about this, or what's a step-by-step guide to them?
Yeah. So, if you're really small, you don't have money for lawyers. Let's say like you're some kid in your mom's basement. You're really just trying to get started. All right. Like go to tcpaworld.com. It's free. It's literally free. Google, do research, right? Follow our YouTube channel, Deserve to Win YouTube channel. We've got hundreds of videos, like literally hundreds of hours of free information regarding the TCPA. We do our best. Again, it's not legal advice, but we do our best to help give you a high level understanding of the law so that you can, act at least loosely in conformity with what the law is, right?
Yep.
And then, maybe if you're brand new or you have, revenue is still in the six figures or something, on an annual basis, you probably can't afford to see. I'm not going to lie. There are other lawyers that do this work, right? And here I am, right? An attorney telling you, talk to another lawyer. But that's what I'm telling you. If you can't afford Troutman Amin right now, that's fine. Start off talking to somebody that does this. They'll give you good advice to get you off the ground, right? Yeah. When you get bigger or when you're ready to scale, give us a call. They will give you that gold-plated advice that you can really rely on and really see your business get supercharged, right? But do something. Please don't think, oh, I'm small, I'm under the radar. Man, nobody's under the radar anymore. Those days are gone.
Yeah, and again, the point is, if you want to hit certain growth level, hit certain numbers, you can't be under the radar or hit there. You're gonna have to grow, right? And you got to do it the right way. I learned that the hard way. That's what it comes down to. So the next thing I want to talk about is pay-per-call is growing tremendously, right? It's a lot of people are shifting towards pay-per-call. They think that's one way to get around this because obviously it's a consumer-initiated call. Yeah. But I know there's risks to that as well. I don't think it's as easy as people think, right? So what are some caveats to watch out for if you're in pay-per-call?
Well, look, from my perspective, the biggest risk of inbound is still outbound.
Yeah.
Meaning, you've got so many people out there generating inbound calls through outbound action. They're going to be outbounding with a pre-recorded call with the press one. Consumer's going to press one, come in as a paper call. Guess what? That's not an inbound call, guys, right? That's an outbound call. You're liable when you take that transfer. And you see all kinds of that in the text message space as well. But let's assume that it's real, or like a real consumer initiated. It's on Facebook or somewhere else where this really is a consumer that has done something. They haven't received their own outbound communication, or they really are just initiating that inbound call. That's fine. If you can close the deal, there's always risks. Maybe your content, your creative is a lie, whatever. That's a whole different issue, right? But from a TCPA perspective, right? Let's say you ingest an inbound call, you pay for that inbound call. That's great. And if you can close on that one call, you're in business. Yeah. But what happens if you can't close, right? Well, you can't call that person back. You don't have consent. And you don't, in all likelihood, have an inquiry or an EBR there as well, right? So paper call is good as far as it goes, but it doesn't always go very far. You've got to put yourself in a position that you can either close on that first call or that you've got an additional plan to obtain express written consent through an inbound channel, which you can do via SMS. There's ways that you can do it, but it's actually pretty tricky. So I do have a number of clients that are, essentially taking in inbound calls and then converting those using SMS or using email or using apps to get consumers to actually give valid express written consent. One thing you cannot do is get it orally, right? You can't have that consumer on the phone.
That's a very big misconception in the industry. So many people firmly be like, I got the call recorded, I'm fine. And then they're not fine.
Absolutely not. A recording of an oral communication is not express written consent. It's not a written agreement. And I understand people are like, oh, a recording, that's like a written document. It's like a written document, but under e-sign, it is not a written document. A written document has to be a literal paper or a digital record that is a physical artifact in writing. And that is not what a recording of an oral conversation is. So to me, again, inbound, consumer-initiated inbound, if they're real, very valuable, very valuable. And there is going to be more, those are going to go up in value, right, in one-to-one land, but you've got to be careful for the outbound to inbound phenomenon, and you've got to realize the limitations that you can't call that person back. You've got to close on that call.
So let me ask you something, because this is something that we don't do a lot of inbounds in our call center, but I've trained our call center. I think I've trained them correctly. If you get an inbound call from one of these campaigns, and because I know a lot of these litigators are very savvy, they trick you, and they make it seem like they're interested when they're not.
Oh, sure.
You know, it's like, what do you call it, catfishing kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I can't wait to sign up. Hold on. I can't hear you. And then let me write this. They get a pen and paper and they write, where you located, all this stuff. There's certain buzzwords we look out for, right?
Yeah.
And what happened, like, if I get disconnected, do me a favor, call me back, okay? Oh yeah, I'll call you back. And you think you got the best lead in the world. And then they hang up the phone, you call them back. You're screwed at that point if they want to go after you, right?
Depending on what technology you're using to call back.
Okay.
Yeah, but David, man, you are not wrong. Yeah. These guys are smooth too.
Yeah.
I mean, like I listen to some of these call recordings and I mean, they've got these elaborate stories and like these just completely,
they make you feel bad for them.
Completely manufactured backstories that they're telling you, none of which is true. They'll give you jobs that aren't true. They'll give you income levels that aren't true. Yeah. They'll give you backgrounds. They'll tell you stories about things that have never happened. I mean, it is insane how committed some of these guys are to essentially committing fraud. I mean, what they're doing is fraudulent. And there's an opportunity in some instances to actually sue them for fraud when they're engaging in this kind of behavior. But at the end of the day, you do need to have agents. I mean, it's really hard to train an agent around this. So I'm actually kind of curious what your tips would be, because from my perspective, I just say, these agents should be following scripts, following protocols, not misleading the consumer, doing their best to communicate with that consumer. If the consumer asks to be called back, you have to understand either you have the right level of consent or you don't. And if you don't, it doesn't matter how hot the lead is, you can't call it back using regulated technology. You might be able to call it back manually, right? Depending on the circumstances, but you can't call it back using that regulated technology. You can't put them on a drip campaign to use AI. You can't do any of that. You've got to treat them as if they're fresh off the street, almost as if they're a cold call. Yeah.
And one thing I want to make clear is that for everyone to understand, if you're in pay per call, you're not immune to this. Or if you're a client, a big, let's say insurance shop, whatever, you're buying tons of pay per call leads, that's a good, helps minimize the risk, but there's still risk out there, depending, like you said, the type of technology you call them back from. Do you actually have the consent? There's so many nuances to this, and that's where these are sophisticated people. They make their living off of this. Yeah. Like that one lady with the 85 phones, right? They know the law in and out, and they know how to manipulate that to their own good. So you gotta protect yourself. So even though you may be just doing pay-per-call, you're not outbound or you shifted. This is why you need, someone like Eric Troutman and Amin and Pooja to work with you, because this is the stuff that could just wreck your business, like we talked about earlier. And people forget about that. Is what it is.
It's true.
They think pay-per-call is a silver bullet, which I love pay-per-call. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, it's not bad.
But it's still not. There's no real silver bullet. You got. I mean, maybe there is if you follow the whole Troutman Amin 15, right? We'll talk about it in a bit, but like, you got to be careful. So there's so many ways to get screwed.
Yeah, I'll put it this way. There's no specific channel that's going to be bulletproof, right? Yeah. Every channel, every way you're communicating with the consumer, every funnel is going to have its own risks. Some are greater than others, right? Obviously, if you're doing outbound pre-recorded calls on third-party data, there's risk, tremendous risk, right? If you're doing manual calls on owned and operated, self-generated, the risk is much lower. If you're doing, pay-per-call, assuming it's done right, the risk is low, but there's still risk, right? And really, I think the point ultimately is that you should have your eyes open. You should understand what your risks are, right? Before you deploy any potential outreach program, before you build a business practice around any form of marketing, you should understand what the risks are. You should understand what the good and what the bad is of that strategy, because everything comes with some warts, right? Yeah. Nothing's perfect.
100%. Great stuff. I want to shift into some other stuff about you, how you grew. You've grown tremendously. Before I do, I want one last thing. I don't want to get off this topic until we talk about what's the worst, the biggest horror story you've seen since you've been practicing. I'm sure there's a ton of them.
There's a lot. And I mean, it's hard to measure right? What the worst is. I mean, I've seen small businesses go bankrupt. I've seen really just some very like heartbroken individuals that have to sell their house. I mean, I've seen some really, frankly, pretty bad stuff. But those are actually kind of smaller scale from a judgment perspective. I mean, to me, some of the most terrifying things are shifts potentially in the law that affect everybody, right? Things that I really try not to publicize too much. Like some of the biggest thing I talk about on TCPA World every day, new decisions. But to me, the biggest changes, the scariest things, I don't talk about on there because I don't want the plaintiff's bar that reads my material to know about this, right? And so I've got my own private newsletter that I send out to just my clients and my close friends. And so I'll only cover things there. And I don't even want to talk about it here, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, there are some rulings that are so nasty and terrible that if they are followed, if they are expanded upon, I mean, it puts everybody out of business. Yeah. It's just stupid. You know what I mean? I've seen litigators that receive one call, get a TCPA case certified. I've seen people opt in multiple times and still earn 8-figure settlements. I mean, you see really gruesome things out there, but I don't like sharing those stories because sometimes people hear that and like, oh, well, then there's nothing I can do, right? I mean, if I do everything right and some troll can still get through and, a brand can still have to pay an 8-figure settlement, then why even try? And that's my point. Like, I don't like to talk about the really, really bad stuff. I like to talk about actually the success stories where, people walk in, the wolf comes knocking at their door. I make a couple of phone calls to Anthony Peronic and boom, the case is gone, right? Like those are the stories that I think people need to understand and hear because I don't want people thinking, oh man, it's absolutely hopeless. I want them to understand like, man, there's always risk in everything you do. And again, here, big reward. So there's going to be big risk, right? There's going to be big risk. But there is the opportunity to do things the right way, protect yourself, comply with the law, and don't make yourself low-hanging fruit. Yeah. And then your odds of walking out of here, a rich person, very high.
Yeah. I love what you said, don't make yourself low-hanging fruit. Yeah. And the way you prevent that by having a checklist, making sure you're abiding by everything, doing everything you can, minimizing your exposure. That's what it comes down to. That's all we can control.
Yep.
Good stuff. I mean, we can talk about this for days. This is amazing. I can't emphasize enough. TCPA World, subscribe to it. Great resource. I forgot the YouTube channel. Thank you. What's the name of the YouTube channel?
Deserve to Win.
Deserve to Win. Good one. And we deserve to win at the end of the day. That's right. Good. So we're going to shift now to, you've grown tremendous. I saw you in 2019 and I mean, Pooja on your team, that's amazing. Your partner of yours, she's phenomenal. You have such a great team and they all seem happy. They're willing to help. And what's advice for scaling a team like that? I imagine it's not easy. I've done it. It's tough, a lot of challenges, but you seem to have done it in a very good way. And I want to talk about that a bit.
Yeah. Well, so I'm going to tell you, if you're a businessman, don't become a lawyer. There is no harder business to scale than law.
I could imagine.
Because our product is me. It's us. It's literally the billable hour. That's what we're selling. So we get to go out in the sales cycle to a conference, right? Yeah. Spend all day on the floor, spend all day talking to good folks like you. And then guess what? At 5:00, everybody else is done. My day hasn't started. Yeah. Now I and the rest of my team get to go to work, right? So it's an incredibly time consuming, like I 100-hour weeks every week for me. And that's fine, right? But so when you're trying to scale, like how do you scale that? The only way to do it is to go off and get another person, human being, that is going to perform that good or service, right? That service of being a great lawyer. Oh my God, how do you go off and find a great lawyer that does TCPA? You don't. You can't. They don't exist. If they did, they'd be working for me, right? So you have to bring in just talented, raw talent. But for us and for our firm and for our brand, it's not just enough to have the best lawyer from the best law firm. We also always are looking for people with great, incredible backgrounds, right? So like Pooja, as you know, she's an elite athlete, right? Spartan athlete. Brittany, as everyone knows, she's a Lakers girl, right? Tori was a competitive cheerleader. Like every single person on our team has this incredible backstory where they did something just tremendous. This is what we look for. Like I want tremendous, incredible people. And I want our firm to be a reward. Like if you have worked your butt off your entire life, you've been the best, you've worked the hardest, you've demonstrated over and over and over again in your life that you are committed to being the best, then you deserve an environment where everybody else is that same mindset. That's beautiful. That's what we're trying to create. And so far, knock on wood, we have created that. And that's why, we are a firm of just 10 people and we are handling more multi-billion-dollar litigation files than any other law firm in the country. I am convinced of that. I don't know that. There's no statistic that says that, but I am convinced that that is the case, right? Yeah. We handle more big, complex federal court cases than any other law firm. We've got, it's amazing what our little firm is able to do because every single member of that team is handpicked to be and is entirely committed to the cause. And the other thing I'll tell you is, one of the things that turned me off of big law was there was just so much pretense. There was so much bullshit. Like people would just say one thing to your face and it was like always a different story behind your back. It was just garbage politics nonsense. And, at our firm, we are so blessed that everyone's just so firmly committed and focused on the same cause that like there's none of that. Like we're just so busy. We work so hard till our eyes are flying out of our head that like we don't even pretend to not like each other. Yeah. We all flipping love each other because we're all committed to that same objective. Yeah. And so like when I look at Pooja, I'm like, flipping love you. And she looks at me and she's, I love you. And it's like, that's the same for every member of a team, all the way down to my wonderful assistant. Like I could not operate without these people doing what they do day in, day out. And so it's only natural that I'm going to be like, man, you are incredible. I fucking love you guys. Like I'm so appreciative of you. And that just exudes from every single person because that's like the level that we push ourselves to every day.
And I think they believe in the mission, right? The vision too. They have a mission, you have a vision, and it starts with you, obviously, and Pooja, and they follow the mission, and you got the right people.
They're believers, man.
Believers,
we have and that's the other thing we look for. Ultimately, at the end of the day, before we hire anybody, the question is this person a believer?
That's huge.
If they're not a believer, I don't care how good or smart they are, it's poison. It's poison. To have somebody at an institution that does not believe in the mission, it's cancer.
That's great.
You can't have it. You cannot have it. So you have to make sure that everyone you bring in has that extraordinary background, incredibly talented, and is a believer. Because a believer will give their all for that mission, and others won't. Simple as that.
That's huge. And talking about fanatics, right?
Yeah.
People like go nuts for their soccer team, their baseball team, their football team, right? And you want them to do the same for the company that's feeding them, right? The company so they're fanatic of your organization. It's going to bleed. They're an ambassador. They're selling all day long for you, right? So it's a good point you make. It's something that no one's ever talked about or on our show, or I never thought about it. It's huge.
And it's a two-way street. Understand, right? You bring these people in. I tell people all the time, and it's true. Like, I don't believe in exploitation. I don't believe in bringing people in and then making them work and then not rewarding them.
Yeah.
And rewards, it's multifaceted, right? Again, I just described people that are coming onto this team are incredibly talented. They've worked their entire life to be in the best environment possible. So you've got to pay these people. And I don't mean just money. Sure, they make good money, but with opportunity, with the opportunity to demonstrate how great they are.
Yep.
And that means putting them up on stages, taking them to conferences, inviting them, putting them in front of clients, taking them out to dinner, putting them obviously on big trials, big cases, having them argue, giving them that opportunity to show, right? To showcase those talents, those gifts, those abilities that have made them so unique and successful in life. And I mean, you put all that together, right? You take believers and you give them opportunities and you really throw them into the fire and let them succeed and help them succeed. Man, it is so beautiful. It is a beautiful thing that we've got. And I hope, knock on wood, that this thing keeps going and keeps growing the way it is. But man, like I said, so hard to scale. So much energy goes into the selection process and the training process. So it's tough.
I want to talk about that next, right? And we'll wrap up on this, is that you work in 100-hour weeks, you're traveling, you're going here, you're going there. And you mentioned prior to us airing today about your time management and focusing. There's so many shiny objects. There's so many opportunities out there, right? But you've been able, it seems like, narrowly focus and grow as a result. So can we talk about that? What is your process for that? How do you do it? Because it's a very strenuous workload, obviously.
Well, yeah. So look, first of all, I'm blessed. Obviously, I love what I do.
Yeah.
I love protecting.
You can tell.
I mean, I protect people for a living. That's what I do. I protect people. I share information. I educate. I bring people together. Like, I love what I do. So I wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning every day and I get to work. Boom, instantly, right? By the time 7 a.m. rolls around, I've done a couple of blogs. I've done a marketing piece. I've done a blast. I've read every case I need to read that day. I go on a jog. I get a little exercise in. And by 8 o'clock, now I'm working, right? And, I'll work as my assistant will attest. I'll work till I go to bed. I mean, that's me. And I have no problem with that because I'm so energized and so excited with what I do every day, right? But as I was telling you before, I am now very, very cautious. The reason why I'm so, ultimately incredibly productive is I don't waste my mental energy on anything unless I need to be doing it myself. And so I've got an incredible team of staff, in addition to our incredible team of lawyers. And it starts with Selah, who's sitting right here, incredible team of assistants and staff that do everything that I need so that I don't have to think, right? So I don't need to think about what I'm eating for lunch. I don't need to think about what I'm wearing. I don't need to think about how I'm getting someplace. I don't have to think about anything. And I would highly advise anybody that's trying to be a high level executive or operate and just have maybe their most productive life that they can have, and they're focused on a major objective, whatever it might be. I mean, you've got to have the assistance to do this. And most very successful people have figured that out, right? Like, you talk about, the richest, most powerful people in the world, they've all got teams of assistants that are helping them out. And, I'm obviously not at that level, but for me, in order to do the things that you see me do, that people see me do day in, day out, in addition to, of course, practicing law, which nobody sees me do, which is the ironic thing, right? What I do 13, 14 hours a day, nobody sees. You only see the thing I do 2 or 3 hours a day, which is pretty interesting. But you can't do it without those great staff members at your side and that great team at your side. That's just a fact.
Great advice. And, that's amazing advice. And same thing with me. I can't travel, do all this if I don't have the team operating the business, right? And having the right people in the right seats in the bus. So beautiful stuff. And we touch upon a lot here. Incredible stuff. Is there anything else that we didn't touch upon that you think the audience needs to know?
No, man. I mean, I'm just going to wrap up the way I started, which is I think you're such a fresh voice, such a fresh perspective in this industry, David. I'm very impressed with what you've done. I'm watching very carefully. I know a ton of people are, and it's just great, man. You keep it up. You keep energizing people the way you energize people. I think this industry needs it, especially now.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So listen, and we've been a little subdued here. There's people talking. We want to be respectful over here, right? Normally we have a little more energy, but hey, this was amazing. Like I said, you got to protect your downside in business. If you're not protecting your downside, you're not watching your back. I always say, check yourself before you wreck yourself, right?
It's true.
Check yourself. We're in SoCal. Ice Cube is from SoCal, right?
I hadn't thought about that.
So, yeah, check yourself before you wreck yourself. So get with Eric Troutman and his team, Eric Troutman Amin. Subscribe to TCPA World YouTube channel. Do that as well. We'll put all these links here, and let's go, guys. Let's protect ourselves. Let's make some money. Let's go.
Let's go.